somebody sort of tried React and it's having a problem. Something doesn't make sense. Something doesn't like click, if I would say. Please come forward and just ask, please. If there is anything you want to you're not sure about or something, I don't know. I think you had enough. You had quite a good post to be able to sort of like retrospect on it, maybe.
I will say that I am having trouble. Because I don't know if I'm practicing enough, but things are not making sense sometimes to me. I mean, I am not comfortable enough like other languages.
What isn't making sense?
The flow, because sometimes I don't know if I need to use that mount and not mount and will mount.
Yeah. Okay.
These things.
So the lifecycle methods, you mean, right?
Yes.
Is that specific to the lifecycle method, or it's like more of a general like problem with React or like lifecycle itself?
There are few things here and there, but lifecycle is main.
Okay, but it makes sense. Lifecycle is really confusing, and just to clear it out, they actually got rid of it from React in the newer version.
So we don't have to use it.
so your concerns are real. People were confused about lifecycle, so it's not so they were really confusing to the point where they really got rid of them.
Yeah, and I saw a few of my fellow students' homework to get an idea how they are using things, and I don't remember who did use that. They made some different module and doing same thing in that, and they created the mount method, and the same thing was going on inside that. I was confused that why there are two things like the fetching function. They were fetching data from API, and they were doing double. Fetching two times, one in mount and one in other method. So that was also a bit confusing.
Yeah.
Maybe I thought that I am the only one because everybody else has submitted their homework. So I thought that I am the one who's left behind and don't know any idea how these things work, and what is the right way to use those things.
You mean the right way to use the life cycle?
Yes, and you are saying that they get rid of it, so we don't have to use it?
No, there is something called hooks. Maybe you get a hand of it and use it in this class, but not sure. But otherwise, I think you are more than capable of actually going to the React documentation and like reading about it. We'll try to post a link about it.
I try to read about hooks, but I couldn't understand that much. They use it in like in the top of the page where we import things, and I didn't really get how things are working, because maybe there are some functions which are inbuilt in node modules, and when we install modules, and then we can fetch things from there, or maybe we can import things. I don't really know.
Yeah, makes sense. I get your confusion, honestly. I get your confusion. Any other concerns or remark or something?
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, it's not a question. I just wanted to ask you if there are kind of any not rules, maybe standards, like how how different components interact. What I want to ask is, I have a parent, I have multiple childs, I have a parent, or I have one child. How does the state and props work between these? Like, for example, if I have a state in my parent, I don't have to have a state in my child. So all rules like that with state and props between parent and children.
Honestly, I don't know what the other mentors have to say, but for me, I don't see any rules. I think you are asking the same question as if I have some code in a function, should I call that function or sort of like duplicate the code inside if it's a bit different than the function? I think this is more general programming. Like in programming, we try to define something once and really try to reuse it as much as possible so we don't come up with this duplicate things that works like parallel and people will be confused about which one to use. So this is like a more general problem, I would say. This is not related to React, because even if you have a normal jQuery app or a normal like vanilla JavaScript app, you will sort of have the same problem. But yeah, I think you can clear this by practicing and reading code. Yeah.
Okay, then maybe I have another doubt also. For example, I have a parent component doing something, and I have a child which is doing another thing. So when suppose I have a state inside my parent. So when can I decide if I need to have a state in my child or not?
Maybe I can answer this one. So I think the kind of topic that you're touching on there, and why Yunus is saying this is kind of like a general concept in programming, is because you're speaking about how you can best compose your React components together. So if you've got a parent component and a child component, which component should house the state? When should I be passing props? Should both components have state? And I think you've touched on one of the more challenging aspects of React, certainly, and programming in general. And I think one of the blessings and the curses of React is it doesn't really give you any sort of framework or guidelines as to how you should compose components together, what best practices are, because there's a ton of different best practices depending on your application. And the honest answer is there is no real answer to that. I think what when you build out applications and you start building more components and you start reading more people's code, what you'll begin to realize is where it makes most sense for data to live given your specific case. Okay. So there is no answer. I think however you build it now is just as right as however you'll build it later. Later, once you've got more experience, you'll have more experience to have the foresight to be able to know, like, oh, if I compose my components like this, once I begin to grow the app to 10 components, it's going to be much easier to run it this way. But given your current knowledge, I think you should compose them as you see fit. We'll try to give you feedback best we can on the homework, but it's certainly a concept that I still struggle with at work today. Like I'm always asking myself, like, where does it make sense for this data to live? I have no idea. Okay. That's the struggle of every day.
That is exactly true. That is exactly true. I also still struggle with it. So
yeah, and I think that comes to what we are going to discuss this lesson. It's about a little bit about state management, and which is actually about data flow. So maybe after this class, you have a better idea of how to compose your React components.
Okay, and I also wanted to ask, you guys have already told this, but now since we have completed 3 modules of React, I just want to know once more that what is the meaning of state, what is the meaning of props? Because now if you say something, I can understand it better.
I would say something, and the mentors maybe can follow up because I think each one of them get it differently. But I would say props are about communication between components, especially parent-child.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of props. State is something internal to a specific component to manage sort of time-based interactions. So you have a list of things, you add something to it, you delete something from it. So it's like an internal state that you keep around to remember what state you are in. If the user is logged in, if the user is logged out, stuff like that, like your state. But that doesn't have anything to do with communications with other components. State lives inside the component sets state, the component reads state. That's the component. But props are for actually communicating. Like we call a prop. It's like an HTML attribute. You have an image and you pass a source attribute to it. You have a link and you pass an href attribute to it. So because you want to communicate with this link and say, please link, point to this URL, or image, please show this image, show the source. So props are the same thing. Props you pass to specific components to communicate with them, to give them options.
Okay, so is
Not
it
sure
that I pass state through props? It's always state that is passed in props, or is it not that?
Usually, like I think you can think of state as being dynamic and update.
I'm muted.
Am I? I'm not muted. It doesn't. Am I muted now?
No.
No, I can hear.
Can you hear me?
It's pretty weird.
Maybe if Eunice has muted me on his side by accident. But what I was going to say, just to build on what Eunice said, is state is dynamic, and then props are static in the sense that they can be read-only. So you can expect a prop to change when it's passed to a component, but if you need to update that prop, you can never update a prop directly. You need to update state in order for that information to come down through props. So it's kind of like it comes down. The data, the way it's structured in React, is state is always the highest, and state gets passed down to components through props, and components can read those props. So as you continue to build out apps and you get more comfortable with composition, this is kind of what I was speaking about before. You realize, oh, this component actually doesn't need to be dynamic at all. It just needs the user's first name and the user's last name, and then it just cares about rendering, maybe a specific div styled a certain way given the first name and last name, where the component above that, the app, that's where the user state lives. So this is going to decide, what the user's first name is, what the user logged in is, what their email is, and that state can be passed to that property.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. So it's always the state that is passed in the props.
I don't think it's that kind of. Maybe someone else can answer that question.
So what else than state is passed in the props?
I would say state can be passed as prop, like so many other things.
Okay.
So because when you pass a prop, you are passing a value, a number, a string, a function, an object, a date. These values, they could come from state. If you have an array and you pass it to a component through props, it could come from a state originally. But there is no like hard bound. There is no specific tightness between the prop and state. State could be transported within props, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be.
Okay, then can you just give me a very small example where I pass something other than state as a prop to a different component?
Yes, for example, last time when we did the initial.
Sorry, I cannot hear you. I think you're muted.
Last time when am I muted?
No, now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. For example, last time when we passed an initial counter for the component, so we can have it like that. Or let's say I want the component to be red or light. I would pass a prop to it. Let's say I have a link component. I needed to point to a specific thing. I will pass an href to it. Let's say I have a component with a button, and when I want to click it, I want to run something. I will pass a function from outside to it. So I can pass all sorts of things to components, like all sorts of things, including state. Because state at the end is just a bunch of objects and arrays and things. There's nothing special about state.
Okay. Okay, then my next doubt is if I am passing other things other than state into props, then why should I pass it through props? Why can't I do it inside the class or inside a function?
Can you repeat that again?
Yes. Okay, suppose I'm passing something other than state in my props to a component. Okay. So in that case, why should I pass it through props? Can't I do it inside the class or inside a function?
Yes, you can do, but sometimes I would say ask yourself the same question again. If you have a function that does something, and you pass some arguments to it, why not just doing the things inside that function without calling the other function? The purpose is that we have already made it a function that does something. and it expected some argument. So why not just using it and making it parameterized?
Okay.
The same thing with components. We have already a component that does something, maybe a button, maybe something, and we pass some options to it. Because if we go by the thinking that I can do everything in my component, you will end up with a component that hosts all your website, and it will not be React anymore. You're not using the concept of components anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
So you have a to-do item component, and you pass the text to it, so it will display the to-do item. If
Okay.
you put the to-do item inside the to-do list and you put the to-do list inside the app, you will just come up with like a website. You think you are doing React, but that's not React. React is about like really small components that can be reused.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does.
Cool. Yes. Any other questions, or we can pass to the content of this week's class?
I just have a small question. Can you hear me first?
Yes. Yeah, but your voice is like so low. Like,
Really? Like
yes. Feel you're underwater.
if I talk like this?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, great.
That's better.
I just have a question that because I've been working on my homework, I didn't send it in the channel, but Brandon was looking at it. How many states can I have? Can I have a state that lives in a child? In a children? Yeah.
Is your question, can you have a state that lives in children or a child?
Can I have more than one state?
So by definition, a component have state, or has a specific component, a given component has some state. Okay? That state, it's an object. Okay? So a component has state, which is an object. Because it's an object, you can actually put anything inside it. You can put like 700 million keys. Because it's just an object. You can have like user, to-do list, like you can have so many things inside an object. For example, think about Facebook. Like they have so many things inside inside their store.
So my main issue is, and I think half of the class got stuck in the same, it's with the update from the items. I did almost all the homework and I'm just stuck with updating the thing. Right? And I did, and then for updating it, I did a state, because I have a state in my form and I have a state in my parent, and then I did a new state for updating the thing. And I think I mixed it too much. Like I really feel like I should like erase everything and do it again.
Yeah, that could be a solution, but it's not a solution for everything, honestly. So I would say that it's like it is literally like functions. For example, every function has its own local state because it can keep parameters and like change them inside the function without the outside world knowing. So like components are the same. They have their own state and they manipulate it inside. So how to exactly design your state and how to exactly sort of like share it, that's really, there is no sort of magic bullet or like silver bullet how to organize that. But I would say usually try to not, like, the one crucial thing that you need to keep in mind is that please don't duplicate state. Never duplicate state. Do everything except duplicating state. Try to say, if I already have a list of something, do I need a new state to hold that new something? Or I can just pass it as prop from the parent. So don't introduce new state unless it doesn't exist in any other side of your application. Now you are free to actually introduce new state.
So
I think I could add to that a little bit, unless maybe you want to say your point first, Lucia.
No, but because you know what I'm talking about too, so I'm pretty sure.
So you can have, I think when you think about where to put state in a component, think about the component as an isolated little module. So to add on what Younes is saying, like you would never want to take, let's say we're talking about the to-do list here. And like we've done many times before, you've got your state where you've got a list of all your to-dos. So, we've got the properties called to-dos. It's an array and it's got several to-do list items within it. And you would never take that array, pass it as a prop to another component only to save it in state again. That's unnecessary. Whereas if we're looking at writing a form component to update our to-do list, I think it makes sense to have our state with all the to-dos in like a to-do component. And then within our form component, there's going to be another object with state. And that's where you can save the values of the input. Because if you think about it at the end of the day, the component above, the parent component, it doesn't have to think about what the input values are. It doesn't care. All it cares is about this list. But down below where you've got that form where you're managing all the inputs, at that specific location, that's where it cares about the values of the inputs. So it doesn't make sense to hoist that any higher. It makes sense to keep it right there. And then that way you can share that state with every individual input. And then ultimately the on submit function so that you can submit it and then do whatever you need to do. Does that make more sense? Or is that more confusing?
So then for updating the state, it makes sense to have a state just for updating that item. I need to pass it back.
So, I mean, here's how I would think about it. There's two elements to it. So what you need to do or what I would do is pass a function that's expecting all of the input values as a prop. It's going to get those input values from the state within your form, but that function is able to update the state in its parent above it.
But update the state in the parent, because the update function, after editing to update it, I have built it in the parent. But to work on to change, instead of showing the to-do, show it a new input so I can update it on it, that I have done it in the to-do item. So what it's not clear for me is like, okay, I have done it, like I am almost there, and that's why I haven't asked for more help now.
Yeah.
But it changes to the input and everything, but I don't understand how am I going to take that value and shoot it to the parent to re-render that part.
Yes, that makes sense. So you can almost, it sounds crazy, but you can send functions from parent components that have access to the set state function of that parent component to child components. And by doing that, that's how you can shoot up the state values of the child component from the inputs from your form up to the parent again, which I don't think is entirely clear.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I need to work on that, but then I got so stuck that. But yeah, you saw what I was working on, and so. Okay, thank you. I think that should be able to finish my week 3 homework.
Okay, perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, it seems like the two most confusing things, which absolutely should be the most two confusing things. Oh, sorry, Eunice, am I still muted for you?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Actually, ignore my point. I'll let you carry on and have anything interesting to say.
So, no questions? Okay. Let's carry on. Board. Well, I have so many screens.
No. Can I add something?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Actually, I want to advise all of my classmates to go to Free Code Camp and try the React practices there, because it's like a extra, exercise for that. It helped me because I start React with hooks, and then you told me do it in classes, because we do it in classes practice. So I went there and I do the practice there. So Maybe it could help to understand props, children, and everything. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
That's a great idea. I highly encourage everyone does that.
I do the same. It's really pretty solid. I always advise people to learn if they want a curriculum outside of Hacker Future, because I know so many people who didn't get the chance to get into Hacker Future, and I would say Free Code Camp is pretty solid.
Well, I just got a doubt now. I was just thinking of something. Okay, so let's take our week 3 homework, where the parent component is to-do item and the child is to-do list. So now in the child item, I have update and edit and delete. Okay, because that's what I'm rendering in my child component, because from parent I use a map and I render the child component. So my question is, why should I, because since the update is in my child component, the update field or the delete button or the edit button, everything is in my child component, why should I write these function inside my parent?
I can say something, and same thing, people can follow up. The thing is that there is something called hosting the state up, which is pushing the state up. This concept. What does it mean? It means the more you push the state up, the more other components can access it. And the more you push it down, the more you limit other components from accessing it. So sort of the benefit of putting it in the parent, it means if there is other sibling of this component that want to access the state, the parent can pass it to them easily.
Yeah.
Compare it to just putting it in the child, no, you don't have any access. If somebody wants to see how many items are in the to-do list, that's not possible. Because the child cannot tell a parent or a sibling about state. But the parent can tell the children about state. I think that's sort of my main takeaway about that. But I don't know if other people have more insights.
I don't think I have anything else to add here.
And I just saw one more thing, like when we handle change in the input field, like when we have multiple input fields, and when we try to handle the change, I just saw in some I don't know, blogs or videos that there can be one function which can handle multiple changes.
Yes.
Could you just tell us how we can think about it?
So what you're saying is that if you have like first name and last name fields,
yeah, maybe we can take our homework example, because there we had one deadline, which is a different kind of a date kind of input, and one is a like normal text field. So if I want to handle the change of both these fields in a single function.
Yeah, so if you have two fields and they have two different, you can have two different separate functions for handling the set state of them, or you can put one function. Usually that's achieved by passing a name to it. So to each field you pass a name, and once you have a name on each field, you have only one function. And inside that big function, you say if name is equal to deadline, you do something. If name is equal to, because you can access the name of the input inside through the event.
Yeah.
That's usually how I can like sort of achieve that.
Okay.
So probably we can carry on now to the content of this class. Okay. So we'll be covering something today called the Context API. It's pretty famous API, and it's pretty advanced. Not a lot of people uses it. Well, at least talking like beginner wise. If you go for a company or something, I think it has like pretty a lot of usage. And we will discuss something called the state management in general. And I hope you can see my screen because I'm sharing it. And there's a terminal in front of me.
Yes.
Nice. Cool.
May I ask you to kindly zoom in or make the text a bit bigger?
Can you say that again? Zoom in? You mean just zoom in?
Yes, please.
Yes. So
Yeah,
this-
yeah, it's good zoom in because if even if the quality the record is not so good, if you are zooming, it will work. We will get it.
nice. So I hope this is good. Let's just
Thank you.
yeah, of course. Let's hide this terminal. I have hand sanitizer in front of the screen in front of me. I don't know what's doing here, honestly. Leave away. Yes, so we will carry on through our example, and I will just delete this component and say delete. So what we will try to build is a really classic example. It's like the day and light button switcher. It's pretty simple. People will say like that is a really stupid example, but we cannot really make it that complex. Otherwise, we will be like lost in the details compared to just focusing on the real concept, which is dangerous. So we have our component and it returns a div.
Sorry, are you recording?
I am recording actually. I am recording.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So we have an empty div and we say hello, and I will go here and say control npm start. Come on. Come on. Everything on npm takes a long time. This is pretty weird. It's like it's taking too long. What? This is pretty stupid. npm start. This is pretty weird. Mm. We started on another port. Yes. No, doesn't seem to work. That is pretty weird. That is super strange. So I will do the famous trick about going up one level, RM, RF, first week. And say mpx create React. Of course, create React app, and we say post week. But mpx, not npm. Hopefully this will work. Oh, there appears trouble with your network connection. I have a problem with my internet. But I can connect. What the fuck? This is pretty weird. Maybe because I have the VPN. Oh, I am in google.com. Seems to work. Let's please. Okay, I got why. Yeah, this is actually a good tip because my company has a private npm registry, so my company doesn't use npm, but it has its own private registry. Yes, yes. I am trying to admit. Yes. So there is a button here to admit people actually. Yes, he should be admitted now. Say cut or move. .npm rc to don't. Now it should work. Now it should really, yeah, it's working. So yeah, my company blocks us from accessing npm because we have our own version of npm registry. So I need to stop that. So if we say cd for week, and we can say npm start now and try it here. Yeah, start. What? Yeah, of course. Good. Yeah. Yeah, seems to work. Nice. Nice. So we can hide this. Then we go to source. As we said before, I will delete everything. Logo, everything. Delete. We'll only keep these two. That was really stupid, honestly. So many problems are happening. And we say import React from React for the sake of repetition. And we say import React DOM from React DOM. And we say React DOM.render. We can give it h1 some random, and we say document get ID. And if we go to public, we go to index.html, we should have a root ID. Let me say this. Does this work for us? It works. That is pretty solid. We have our own setup now after missing it for quite some time. Yes. So, as I said before, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just create a class component, class, just name it app, that extends react.component, and we say render, not return, render immediately. Return, we'll return this one here. And we say app. This should work. So as I said before, let's do the famous day-night example. So we have a screen with the yellow circle and blue sky, and we have a button to switch it. I think that's a nice example to do. So what I'm gonna do, as we said before actually thinking about state or anything, because here we have state, and our state is that we'll be changing from day to night. So instead of thinking about state and stuff like that as a first thing, just try to have a static mockup. Just try to do something. Just a static mockup that renders few things without intertwining it with state. So I'm gonna put a div here, and I'm gonna put another div inside it. and I'm gonna put a button, okay, switch. In this div, I would say class name, as we said before, circle, and this one is class name is, let's say, container or wrapper, maybe wrapper. Yeah. I hate the name wrapper. Yeah. So if we say new file here, index.css, and we go here and we say import index.css. Right. Yeah, of course. So by importing a CSS file here, there is no magic. You are just saying, I want to use the CSS file. So this file will not really do anything or copy it here or something. You will just say, I'm interested in this CSS file. So it's just a handy syntax more than a side effect. So let's say .wrapper. Let's say background is light blue. Yeah, and oh, let's remove this spacing here from the body. So let's say body and HTML margin 0, padding 0. Yes, and this one, let's say width is 100 v width, and height is 100 v height. Yes, looks like the sky. That is not true. And we go to the circle. We say circle, and we say background yellow, because everybody knows that the sun is yellow. And it doesn't show anything because it needs a size. So let's say width, let's say 70 pixel, and height also 70 pixel. 70 pixel, just a random value. And we'll say border radius, so we can make it circle. Let's say 50%. We have the sun. Nice. So let's just increase this to 100 maybe. And yeah. So I'm interested in pushing it in the middle. So what I'm gonna say display flex is it align, justify content center, and we have them in the center, and the button looks pretty weird. Yeah, so I'm just gonna put this button in this here and say, I don't know, it's not formatting it honestly, but we can say flex direction row. No, it's column, not row. Yeah, it's column. Sorry for all the CSS noise. And we have them here, and we can say now align items center. Yeah. And now we can say circle. We can say this one is margin 0. And we say, so we can say 0, 0, 0, 0. And the top, we say it's 10% maybe. This one we say margin top 10% again. Okay, that should be a padding actually. Padding and 1. And this should be maybe 3%. 10% of the page. Sorry, we put it on this one instead. We can just padding top. Are you impressed with my CSS skills?
Yes.
Very nice.
Padding. I don't know. Actually, I don't think so. It is still super horrible. This looks decent. Not also well, no, not 70%. Just 7. Just 7. Yes. So let's go to the button and style the button a bit. I didn't do styling for so much. Damn it. So let's say button. Say border 0. Border. And let's say border radius maybe 5 pixel. That's too much, 2 pixel. And let's say padding is, say it's 10 pixel with a 4 pixel. Oh, that is actually the opposite. The opposite. Yeah, it looks decent. Like not crazy, but decent. We can maybe put a background image, linear gradient to bottom, and we say red, green. That's the most. That's that's pretty weird. That is pretty weird, but it looks cool. It looks cool. We just say here font. Honestly, I would skip this. No, I think that looked pretty weird. Looks from like the 70s. I think this is fine. This is fine. So we have this one now, and it's pretty static. What we are trying to do is switch it to the other design, and the other design means this one is white, and this one is black. Like this. That's sort of the night design. We can even like keep shifting it, but does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you were to do it with just the normal things, what do you do? First thing, do we need state for this one?
By changing the style.
What?
We can just change the style. I mean,
Yeah, but let's say I have a button here. It's called switch. Based on the button, we switch between them.
We can change, swap style without state as well.
What do you mean swap style?
It is only style which we are changing. We can create another class and we can swap.
How to know which class to put?
On click. On click, just switch. If this is day, then switch to night, and if it is
So you are saying we have a state. You are saying on click if it's night. So you are saying there's a state. There's a value that you are comparing.
okay.
So does that what that value where we can store it when you say if day equal, like where we can put that variable day or night?
Inside state.
Yeah.
We need state, I think.
on Excel.
Why? Because we will impact the rendering. The rendering will change. You are absolutely right. We don't need state to switch style, but we need state to remember which state we are in. So,
Yes.
agreeing that we need state.
Yes.
What state we need? We need an object, a boolean. What we need?
I think we need Boolean, and on the bottom we just define on click change.
That is absolutely right. Uppercase. That is actually right, yes. But honestly, instead of putting a boolean, because the boolean will say is day or is night, which is pretty confusing for me. So what I would like to use for these type of things is a string, and we call it like an enum string. So I'm saying that day or night. I can name it, for example. Not sure if you can come up with a good name.
Switch it.
What? Switcher? That doesn't sound like a good day or night. So let's name it, for example, maybe. That is pretty weird. But can we name it, for example, theme? And we say theme day or theme night equal day or equal night. What about that?
Okay, we try.
What?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so let's go with that. So I'm gonna need the state here. I would say state equal theme. And theme is, let's say, initially day. Does that make sense? Hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we say theme day. And let's break our components here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new component called new file here, and we call it maybe switcher.js x.js x.js. Doesn't matter. And we move this button to it. So let's say here function switcher. Switcher, yeah. We say export default switcher, and we say here return switch. We say import React from React. That's pretty good. So here we can say maybe switcher. Yeah, seems solid. And here we can say maybe we can have something called not appearance, but what are we gonna call that? That's pretty format. What are we gonna call that? Video code format. I don't know why this shit doesn't work, but anyways, appearance or day. What are we gonna call it? Any good naming? Let's call it Sky. Nobody wanted to suggest a better name, so here we go. Let's say
Skynet is a better name.
Is it a better name? Sky Status, maybe? No? Looks like a yeah, a news channel, Sky Status. Let's just say Sky. And we move this code here by saying import React from React. And we say function guy return, damn it. I don't know why formatting doesn't work, honestly. Damn it. Format document width. Maybe prettier. Yeah, prettier seem to work. Export default guy. And we can remove the switcher and put it here. It's already there anyway. We can take the switcher from here and say say sky. Yes, and our app still works. Is this good? I think it's good.
Yes.
Yes, so we are good. Now what we will try to do is, as you said before, let's have some sort of conditional style. So let's say this one, we call it dot day and dot night. And let's say we will put the how it's called, put this switcher. So let's say the day is actually how are we gonna do that? Should we do it on parent and switch it? Yeah, so let's duplicate 4 styles. I think that's sort of not a bad thing to do. Or is it bad? What I'm thinking is like putting a value inside the parent, not inside the parent, but inside an upper div, and give it the value. But that will defeat the purpose of what we are trying to do. So let's just say dot sunny, or let's say dot sun, and we say.
I want to suggest one thing.
Yeah.
We can here in wrapper. We can wrapper in HTML. We can switch style there. Switch classes there, and we can write classes in CSS.
Yeah. So that's what I was confused about actually. What I was doing, but I think there is one problem with that, which is that our component now, they will be CSS centric. So CSS will be deciding the logic of us.
Yes.
Imagine that I want each component to change wherever it wants, based on just an isolated thing. I don't want, for example, a specific component to depend on another component, divs to switch its style. Does it make sense?
I think we can do that by writing a new class which says like let's suppose.
Yeah, but there will be one class and it will change them all.
Yes, it will.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that you are enforcing a specific logic on a complete subtree. It means if there is 2 components here and they want to do different things, they will be both governed by this div. So if we will take this component outside, you need to sort of like add some other logic to it. So this component will always assume that the parent will take care of it.
Yes.
So it will assume that it's rendered in a specific context. But what we are trying to build is super reusable components that they don't know anything about where they are rendered. You could pick this component and put it in another website and it will work without expecting the div to have such something. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Super dynamic.
Exactly, like properly dynamic. Like it doesn't know anything about the outside of the wall, like the wall outside of it. But what you are saying is completely valid. If I'm building my application, I would go with the approach that you're suggesting, not my approach. But because I know that I'm building one project and I know everything will be there. But for the sake of experimenting and for the sake of like sort of
No,
knowledge larger, let's try sort of to make it super dynamic, just to see what we can do.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Eunice, Mary is asking you to let her in the meeting. She just pinged in Slack on Slack.
Just a second. Participate. Yeah, it's here. Admit. Yes. In. Yeah. So we have sun and we have moon. Okay. And these mainly for this circle, so we can say white here and remove the white from here. This one is the same. We can say day and dot night. And this one is black, and this one is light blue. Now they would be both white because we are not attaching any classes to them. Does this setup make sense? We have sun and moon, and we have day and night. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, let's go with that then. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna pass. So let's yeah. I'll create actually a new component and call it main. Main. Which is pretty weird name, but just you will see why I'm well. We'd also not do. We don't need to do that. I think we can keep it for another time. But what I'm gonna pass here, I'm gonna pass theme equal state dot theme. So technically, here I'm expecting a theme property or a theme prop. Okay. So first thing, the wrapper, this wrapper, it has general styling and it has two additional classes, day and night, and we attach them selectively based on the time of the day, or the time of, or the state, the value of our state, to be more realistic, because we are not doing that. So if we go here, we say theme. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just create this into a separate variable and say const class name equal. It's a string. I would say wrapper, and I would put a conditional here. I would say if theme equal to day, I would say it's a day. Otherwise, it's night. And we can put this one here. So now if we change this to night, we have black. If we switch it to day, we have the day. What I did here, does it make sense? I just created the what?
Kind of similar to what it reminds me of what we did with the toggle function from. That's how I can.
Yeah. So we are basically toggling the style.
Yeah, in line number 5, it is new to me that I have a variable class name, and in the same line I am doing if and else condition along with wrapper.
What do you like? Is this new to you? If theme equal day?
No. I have a variable name class name which has wrapper, and in the same time I am using this if and else condition.
Yeah, this is just, we are putting strings together. This is string concatenation. There's nothing fancy. It's just putting strings together. You know what I mean?
Yes. I never seen it that way. I mean, I know it makes sense, but I never seen it, all this in one line.
Yeah, so I think this is a very common sort of thing in the React world. But yeah, so what we are saying here, if theme is equal day, we take day, otherwise we take night. You could say, but we can just put theme here. Because theme, it's either day or night.
No, it's okay. I mean, it is new. It is good that it is all in one line. I mean, it is compact.
Yeah, so it's really up to you. You can also put just theme like this. Really up to you. But makes sense, yeah. Thank you for the remark. Yes. And now we want the circle, this one. We want it to be the same. So we say we have our own circle and it's either sun or moon. So we can say here we can duplicate this line and say circle last name. And we can say here circle last name. What? And we have not proper, but instead what was here was circle and either sun or moon. So we can say circle, and if it's day, we say it's sun. If it's night, we say it's moon. That is not really true in Denmark, but let's take it that way. So we have this. If we change the value here, we have night. It switches. Does this make sense?
Yes.
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 Awesome. Let's do something else. Let's have a change time, maybe. We call it change time for now. Let's do it this way. Let's do it the arrow way, so we avoid the problems that we discussed before, and say this dot set state. So what I'm trying to do here is a function that will switch from day to night, when you call it. So I will say this dot set state. If this dot state equal, let me just extract this so we don't get confused. Let's say new state equal this dot new theme, maybe. I think that's more of a descriptive name. New theme equal this dot state. If it's equal to day, we say it's night. Otherwise, we say it's night. Otherwise, we say it's day. And we say here theme is new theme. Does this line make sense? That we check if the current value is day, we take night. Otherwise, we take day, because this is not the day, it's night. And we put that in the new variable. So this variable can only take night or day. Does this make sense for everyone?
Yes.
Nice. And we set the new theme. What we're gonna do is pass this function and say, let's say change theme. We say this dot change theme. We expect it here as a prop, and we pass it to the switcher. And the switcher can get it by its turn.
Yunus,
Yes.
why don't we make this function directly in the Sky? Why should we make this in app and then pass it through Sky? Through a prop?
Because the Sky doesn't host the logic about the doesn't host the logic of the theme. So I try to put it next to the logic of the theme, so they can sort of stay together. If I will change this to theme S, I will just, or theme A, I will go here and change to this to theme A. So it's sort of making the stuff that, it's like when you are sorting, the blue things you put them together, the red things you put them together. So for me, it's a feeling that this makes sense here because they are actually working within the same sort of thing. I could go and put it in Sky, but now the logic will be spread in two sort of areas. But what I want a component that hosts a lot of logic and a lot of small component that only consumes things. Does this make sense, or I'm still not clear enough?
I think I need some time to digest that.
Makes sense. And also, like, if you put this here, for example, okay?
Yeah.
Can you call this dot set state here?
No.
You cannot technically, because the state is owned by this component, not by this sky. So the sky cannot change a state that is not its own state.
Unless you pass the theme as a props.
I am passing the theme as prop, but you cannot change a prop. A prop cannot change. Only the parent.
Define state and put theme in the state.
Can you repeat that again, please?
I mean, if you make a state in the sky and then put the theme in that state in the sky.
Yeah, so you are suggesting
what you are trying to avoid.
So you are trying to suggest that we move the state into sky.
Yep.
We can do that. That's completely. But you will have a problem. If you have another component here, let's say day reporter or something, and it want to access the theme if we are day or night, or send notification, for example, or something. It will not be able to access it because it's inside sky.
Can't we have this theme as a state in both of these objects?
Now we will have a problem. We need to, every time there is an action, we need to reach out to two states and update them. So it's like you are doubling your work just because you want to double your work, not because you want to get anything else. So you will have here state and here state. So when you switch the team here, you need to remember to switch the team here and switch the team here too.
Isn't it the same thing that can be switched in two places? I mean, when you switch team in either of these two objects,
I don't get your
expectation that they are both the same things, but they are accessible from two different places.
Yeah, so it's really up to you. If you want to have a theme for the sidebar and a theme for the main application, like for example, Facebook, they have a theme for the discussion and theme for the main app. Go and split, go and put two themes, one theme for the side thing and one theme for the theme thing. But for us, we have only one theme. It's either day or night. So putting two separate values is like we are sort of trying to increase the work on ourselves.
No, I was expecting if I pass the theme to Sky as a props, then it would be the same theme that I can see in the app. But it's
yeah,
the same
but if you define state here, why do you need this? What?
Or is it the same object that can be changed in two different places? I thought that it's the same thing, but we can change that in two different places. But is it a wrong understanding of the state?
I'm not really getting what's.
If we set him as a state, as we have done here in line 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
I thought that whatever that we do with the state, with the team here, it will be updated in the parent object as well.
No, we said before, if you want to update anything, you call set state. Set state is the only way to update anything. There is no other thing. So if you call set state here, it means you will update this component. Unless here we say it's this dot props dot set theme, and we have or we say just set theme, and we have set theme here. So we need to sort of also tell the parent that we are changing our theme and we are changing his theme too. But changing one object doesn't reflect on a lot of places because that object is just a normal object. If you never call set state, a component will never know that something changed. Not sure if that makes sense or.
No, I think I should read the code and try to bend my head around it.
Yeah, but sort of try sort of to conceptualize it as a question. Like, what is sort of the thing that you are confused about exactly?
I still don't understand that. Why don't we use set a state in the sky and just manipulate theme here? I mean, we define theme as a state in the sky as we have done in app.
But if we will do, for example, send notification here, for example. Okay, and it takes the theme. Do we agree about this?
Yes, but I thought that when we define the team as stating both of these objects, I thought that we are referring to the same kind of same variable, same.
No, but if you
of the memory, and if we manipulate the state in either of these two components, the component that also knows about that.
You are confused about something. You are confused about passing by reference and passing by value. I will tell you something. Each thing that you define in a component, it's only defined and exists inside a component, unless you use prop to pass it. So if here you say team equal 5 or 45, this component will not change. Because the only way to change this component is calling set state.
Yes.
That is the thing. So there is nothing called change object and the object will change.
No, of course we use set state in the sky, but
yes. But if we will change set state in the sky, this component we will not call it set state. So this component will never update. It means this component will never get the new theme.
Okay. Okay, now I understand.
So because it will be local to this one. Sorry for hijacking the conversation actually, for the other people.
I should also
yeah. So let's just delete this one, and we have this, and we have this, and we have this. And yeah, we were on the subject of passing the change team. So we can say change team equal change team. And we say on click here. Click. No, this doesn't seem to work. So let's start debugging. So we pass change team here, and we get change team here. So change team. That is interesting. On click. So let's just do this and say console.log test. Yeah, it is firing. So if we do this and we go to this one and we say console.log test. Seems to work. So yes. Can you say that again?
Sorry, if you listen me wrong, I need to disconnect this. Shouldn't you use like this change theme in the other one, in the other file? Can you go to switcher? Shouldn't be like this change theme, no?
No, because this is a prop.
A props change theme, no?
Yeah, we can do this. I wanted to go destructuring, so we can do this. We can say props dot change theme. But there's actually another problem. That's not the problem. Can you guess the problem from this file?
I think in line 14.
Exactly. It is that's the problem.
Theme.
Yes, you are right. Thank you. So now we have that. So we can switch day and light. Does this make sense? Okay. So this is traditionally how you will do it. This is sort of the traditional thing. Until now, that wasn't really my goal to do this again, because I think I'm quite confident that you could do the same by yourself. But we will be taking this. Let me just. Will be. So if you can notice something, and some people actually started to be quite annoyed. This theme and this this change time, or let's call it change theme. Actually, I think that's better. We are passing it to Sky, and after that we are passing it to Switcher. The same thing with theme here. We are passing it here. So if we can imagine that we have an app called Daytime, and we say function daytime, and we pass theme to it. And we say this, we say props.theme and props.this. Say theme, this state theme. We have change time is change time equal this change theme. Yes, this still works. If you see this pattern that we need to pass something to this component, and this component needs to pass something to this component, and this component needs to pass something to this component. This pattern is quite annoying if you really think about it. So don't we have a way? And before that, let's just I will try to sort of visualize it with you on this one. This. Yeah, I was just trying the whiteboard. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes. So if we try to sort of visualize this together, we have a component A. We have, for example, we have A as a component, and it will render two things, and it will render other things here. Let's say this is C and this is D. In our current setup, if, for example, we want to share something from A to C, we first need to pass it to this one, and this one needs to pass it to this one. There is no way that an ancestor can communicate with a deep component inside the tree. We need to always sort of pass by intermediate step. And if you, for example, take another component like here, so let's say this is K and this is H. So A needs to pass to K. If H needs another thing, A cannot pass to H directly. A needs to pass to K, K needs to pass to C, C needs to pass to H. And you can see this from our example here. That the change theme or the theme itself, the app is passing it to Sky, and Sky is passing it again to Switcher. So because Switcher is inside, you can take Switcher as C. So if we say this is Switcher, and this is Sky, and this is app, Switcher cannot communicate with app directly. Switcher needs to sort of get an intermediate value through Sky itself. Does this make sense? The way props works, and this is I'm just trying to re-explain. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
I assume it's a yes. Nice. So if we say that this is a problem and we are interested in actually we want to pass values directly instead of passing by parents, React actually provide this feature, and it's called context. So context, this feature allows us to say, let's say I have an object here, A5. Instead of passing A to this one and passing it to this one again, you can actually say, this component can say, I am interested. So this one can say, I have a context. Let's call it CXT1. And it has this value. And this one can say, give me the value of CTX1. And through this context object, these two components can communicate. So the gist of it, you don't need to understand this like on a much low level sort of thing, because we will go into code. But what I'm trying to show you is that this context thing allows us to pass values to like grandchildren without the need that we need to pass them through children and children and children. We can just reach immediately to a grandchild immediately. Does this make sense? Of course, not code-wise, but just the concept that I'm trying to. Does it make sense? Nice, I assume so.
Yeah.
Cool.
We read a little bit about context for the preparation of the class, but it's like a huge thing to digest, right?
Yeah. So we will convert this app into using context. Does this make sense? Git status, let's say git add all. Git commit date-based example. Doesn't matter. Yes. So let's create a new file here and call it context.js. Of course, every file is JS. So before actually using context, you need to create a one. And what I mean by create a one is you prepare sort of like I would say like a communication tool or something that can be used. Is someone asking to join or something? No? Participant. No, doesn't. Nice. So as I was saying, we need to sort of a way to create a context, and React provide us with something called create context for that. It's pretty standard name. So we can say here const context, or we can name it theme context equal React.create context. Does this make sense? We are just creating context here. And what we're going to do is export theme context. Export default. So a context has two parts. One part called the provider part and another part called the consumer part. So the provider part is, so a context, the way you should think about the context is that you have some sort of a value, or you have some sort of objects or arrays, just like state, you have some values. A provider, a parent could provide them. Say, I have these values I want to share. And a lot of children, they can subscribe and say, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in this. So it's like one-to-many sort of relationship. We have one provider and we have so many clients or so many components interested in reading from it. And the first thing is that we need to render a provider. So before rendering a provider, let's import the context here. So let's say context from context. And the first thing that you need to do is wrap your application within a context provider. So you can say here context. Okay, I will do something a bit better here. I will say context provider. And I will say context.provider. So this context object that we created here, theme context, can also name it the same here just for the sake of getting confused. That's not necessary. The theme context here, returned by React context, holds two objects or holds two components. So this creates two components for you, one called provider, one called consumer. And when we say theme.provider, as we said, you can imagine like theme context is like this. It has a provider component and consumer component. So we are interested in the provider component, and we get it here. And here we say, we can render it as a component because it's just a component. And we can say context provider. We can do this, which is essentially wrapping our application in a context, or wrapping our subtree with a context. And here you give it a value, like what value you want to share with the children, what value you want to share with the consumers. And in our case, we want to share the theme. So we will say this.state the theme. I will remove the bad examples that we did before. Yeah. So what we did here is we created the context. We put a value inside the context, which is theme, which is just string. And now a lot of children components like Switcher and Sky can get this value. And we will see in a minute how they can get that. But until now, does it make sense? At least not fully, but like sort of the details that we are trying to accomplish. I will take that as a yes.
This will be the equivalent of using var in the regular, in JavaScript, HTML that we usually do.
What do you mean
var? This is something that we can use in the whole thing. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I got you now. Yeah, kind of, because you're trying to have a variable that it's outside and everybody can access it.
Exactly. That's how I associated when I read it in the.
Yes, that's the main thing about the context. Instead of only the child can access a value, we can just pass the value really down, and everybody can access it, no matter how deep they are or nested in the tree. So that's the first part. We render a context provider in our app, and we give it a value, which value we want to put inside. It's like a message. We in the envelope, we want to put a value. So that's the first part. The second part is how to consume it. So let's say, actually, I'm interested in actually not just putting theme here, but we'll come back to it in a second. Let's say in this one, we are not interested in passing theme anymore. We just want to get it from the context. So we don't want to take theme from here. We want to get it from the context. How are we going to do that? There is so many ways. If you go to the React documentation, you can say React context. There is so many ways. This is mainly the API defining it. Yeah, there is this old way of using the render function or a render prop. Are you familiar with this concept? Did somebody sort of like saw this concept before? That we can pass a function to a component? No?
No, not me at least.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense. There is so many other easier way of doing it, and this is sort of one of the. This is one of the way of doing it. Doing this context type here, you can read fully. But actually, I'm really interested in like using hooks for the first time, and I don't know what Brandon and Fernando thinks about using hook now for reading the context instead of passing by children.
Yeah, I think render props can be a bit of a confusing pattern, and I think it's less common that you see them now. So I think it would be okay. I think it would make more sense for us to use the use context hook now than it would to worry about the render props. But
yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to show a bit of hooks and maybe just pass through render props for a second.
Can you repeat that again? Pass what?
I think it's a good idea to show the hooks here in the class for the first time. But maybe it's also nice to show how it would work and the render props and the hook.
Okay, you mean like using a render prop for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just afraid of the confusion that the render prop will spread it now with people. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use hook. If somebody's interested in doing it, we can do it after 4. Anybody is interested in reading or knowing how the render children works, we can do it after 4. Make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's an optional thing that we don't want to confuse you with. So, but if you are interested up for learning it, let's do it. So we will use something called hook. And you will see in the React world, hooks start with the word use. And you can see, for example, React.use, it will give us a lot of hooks here. And what hook mainly is, they are functions that you can call and they can provide you with some features. That's sort of the main thing. And these features we call stateful, but you don't need to confuse yourself about no. The most important thing is that we have something called use context. So if we say here react.useContext, we can import our context that we created. Remember this context? We can say import theme context from context. And you pass the context that you are trying to read. Or because here, as we said, you provide a value. You say this context has this value. If you are interested in reading it from a child, what you do is you import that context and you put it here. And now this function will return that context. And here I will say theme equal this. And I will say format document. Format document with prettier. And suddenly we have the theme available here and we can go and check it. So we could read the theme without actually passing it to Sky. I think this is pretty interesting. I don't know if people agree with this, but I think it's really interesting.
Maybe I can add on it with an example that you might more likely see in the real world, because I think with an example like this, it shows how context works, but it's quite simple because we have so few components. But I think the concept of using a theme to demonstrate context is really great because most websites nowadays, or even your computer, for example, has like a dark mode, right? And there's a lot of elements that it needs to toggle when you've got your default theme, let's say light mode, and you've got your dark mode theme. And in React, managing that theme with a context, using context, makes it incredibly easy, because you can imagine how cumbersome it would be if every single component in your app needed to take a theme prop. that would be insane to have to manage. Every time you add something, you have to worry about adding a theme. Whereas if you do something based on, if you use component for this instead, then you could just access at the very end of your tree where you're probably going to render the component that's going to need that styling. That's where you can insert the context. So you drastically reduce the amount of components that need to worry about what the theme actually is. If that adds any value to anyone's understanding.
Does that make sense?
So,
Does silence mean no?
no, but my question is, I'm thinking in the applications. So this I'm going to use it when I want to make like a global change, like from dark to light theme, right?
Yeah.
It's also used, for example, to change the language of a website.
Exactly.
Should I use this if I have a user and the user logs in and it has to move through different pages? I'm also going to use this?
Could be. It's more of a solution than actually something that you need to use. If you are having a problem passing a lot of props from parent to child to child, context is the rescue. You know what I mean? So context is not for specific features. Context solves a specific problem, which is if you have a lot of values and you don't want to sort of keep passing them from parent to child. Because usually in a huge website, let's say you have a user and you need the user first name and the user last name and email everywhere in the app. Imagine that you need to pass it to each component and each component needs to pass it to its own like children and its own children. Or that will be a lot. But if we put it in a context, we can read it anywhere without even like thinking about it that we need to pass it.
Okay, seems pretty cool though, but I need time to digest.
Yeah, but you just need to sort of have the what does it do, how it works. After that, when to use it, that's really a general pattern that you build as you are sort of like aha moment. You build a lot of like these like oh no, I can use it for this. So it's not it doesn't have like an immediate like usage out of the box, except that it's solving a specific problem. That's what I really like about context. It solves like a specific problem. So usually sometimes you feel that you need context if you are passing a lot of things. Yes, I think this is no, I don't want this one. Yes. Do you have any questions about what we did? No?
I have a question. So, where should we declare this context?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, so where in line 7 you have written const context provider is equal to theme context dot provider, right? So where is the from where is it coming?
It's coming from this file context that we just created.
Okay, it's here. Okay.
Yeah, because we.
So I think. Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when it comes to where to put your context and where to save it, that's a good question. And it ultimately, I think the same answer as before, is it ultimately is up to you. But I think I maybe would think of it almost like, I would almost think of it like a component. And maybe I'd have a file in my project called context if I have multiple sets of context. So I could have a theme context, a user context, because you can have multiple contexts. You wouldn't want to save everything in the same context. And then that way you can export your context so you can, use your provider where you need to use it. And then you can just consume the context everywhere. So you could just treat it almost like another component and then apply it where it's necessary.
So the usage or the movement of context is many directions. In the sense, what I mean is it unidirectional from parent to its child, or how can it be used?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
What I want to ask is like, So this mainly this context, it solves the problem of even the deep generation of children can use things from parent. So that's what it solves. So it can directly pass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if the situation would arise. But I'm just imagining if I have to pass something from my child to parent.
So, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. So how do you update? So if I'm passing a value from my context, I've got my parent way up in the component tree up here, and we want to go like 18 components down. How do I update the data? So there's nothing stopping you from putting functions. You can pass an object as your context, and you can pass updater functions to properties of that object. So let's say we had a theme, we had an object, which is our context object. One of the properties is theme, and then we get to pass a function that's update theme and have that in the context object. And then because context is just a component at the end of the day, we could, in theory, create a component with some sort of state, and that state is used just to manage the state of our context. And then from that component, we could return the theme, the provider from our context object with our values, including a function to update it. So I think the example I'm providing, that's kind of a more complex example, but at the end of the day, when we're dealing with context, we're just dealing with values. And you could use state within your components composed together with context, if that's what you needed for your example or for your project.
Yeah, I agree. Like, just think about context like if it's a state, or if it's technically in React you can't really pass from child to parent. That's not possible in React. There's no way to. If I have a value, I cannot really provide it to a parent. That is not possible in React. But as Brendan say, what we do in React is that we pass callback functions. We pass functions, and these functions, the children can call them to tell the parent about something. And there is no exception to context about that. We can do the same in context. So this theme can be here. Theme equal day, and change theme is a function, or it's this dot change theme or something. And children can access this function and call it, and it will call this function. Does this make sense?
So, I cannot use the context to pass anything from my child to parent.
You cannot do that in React. There's no such a way to do it in React.
So it's only unidirectional. It's only from parent to children.
React is unidirectional. So anything inside React would be by law unidirectional.
Okay.
So React doesn't break this. Only like things goes top down. There's no bottom up.
Okay.
If you want to go bottom up, you need to provide a function top down to be able to call it. That's the only way.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is with every framework, as far as I can recall, not just React. Yeah. If people don't have any more questions, we can go for a break. And yeah, so we can go for a break, and after that we can have exercise where you would be tasked to add something to this context. And yeah, so if you don't have any questions, I think you can go for a break. Do you have any questions?
Can you please share the code on the Slack channel?
I will share it at the end because we will add more things to it.
I wanted to look at that.
Oh, you want to look at it? Oh, sorry. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
I think I can do. Anyways, people, if you want to go for a break, just do it. We will come back at 2:30.
Perfect, thanks.
See you guys soon.
See you. Code sandbox.
if it takes a long time for a break, fine.
What?
I mean, if it takes a long time and if it is not easy and you want to go for a break, it's fine.
No, it's really fine. I'm just trying to share it as a repo more than how it's called. Just a second. Import project, GitHub, import. Yeah, they have CLI. Let's try that actually. I was really interested in trying this.